Hello. The Divine Code reading for April 12th, pages 619 and 620. We are in the chapter Prohibitions of Aiding Theft, Having Benefit from Theft, or Buying Stolen Property, and the Laws of Unintentional Theft. Topic number 13. It is forbidden to benefit from stolen money. Therefore, one may not do business or accept a present from thieves, since the money one receives from them is stolen. So if we know someone's a thief, and that person's profession is that they're a thief, then the assumption is that what the person has is stolen, because that's where they get their parnasa from. That's where they get their livelihood from. It's from stealing. So we're not allowed to benefit from things that they are assumed to have stolen. Even a small amount of benefit is forbidden, such as exchanging currency without paying the thief, since the money can be assumed to be stolen. So if we have a $20 bill and we want to break the $20 bill and we want to get back two $10 bills, we would not be allowed to do that because we know the thief that's probably stolen, the two $10 bills are probably stolen, and we're benefiting from the fact that they stole two $10 bills, and that's not permitted. If the money is not definitely stolen, some opinions permit such a benefit, such a type of benefit. So if we don't know that the money is stolen, we don't know for a fact. I mean, the thief maybe he has a legitimate job, and he also steals. He's a part-time thief. So in that case, we don't know for sure if the $10 bills belong to the thief, or if they were stolen and they don't really belong to the thief. In that case, according to some people, we could be lenient in that case, and we could allow to exchange our $20 bill for the thief's two $10 bills. If one owes money to a thief and pays with a larger sum, it is permitted to accept the smaller sum in return, since this is considered saving money from a thief. And it's discussed in the Shogun Oric, Koshan Mishpat 369-4, and Shogun Oric Harav, Laws of Robbery, topic 12. So again, it's a leniency in that case. We're not asking for. We have a legitimate reason. We're not just asking the thief to break a 20 for us. We're telling the thief, okay, the thief, we owe the thief $10 for whatever reason, and all we have is a $20 bill. So we give the thief the $20 bill. He gives us back a $10 bill. Now it's the same $10 bill that we would have received if we asked him to break the $20 bill. So it's the same $10 bill. But because we have a reason to make the exchange, then it's okay. And the part about saving money from a thief, it's kind of it's an argument for the allowance. But in this case, the allowance the change is that there's a legitimate reason to be making the exchange with a thief. And where it's right on the edge, it could go either way as to whether or not we allow it. And so in this case, it's allowed if there's no legitimate need at the point, then it would not be allowed, as in the case of breaking a $20 bill. All opinions agree that it is forbidden to pay the thief for an exchange of his money, since this is considered aiding theft. It appears that there's no argument at all that this is considered assisting the theft, only regarding exchanging currency, as there are differences of opinion, and this may or may not be considered minimal benefit for the thief. So if the thief is if 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 the thief if we're paying the thief back for money he gave us, and if we're paying him back for if the money he gave us was stolen, and we're accepting that and we're paying him back for it. Now, in the earlier case, it would be if the thief gave the loan that was what could be legitimate money, not stolen money, and then we're paying back the loan, and we are um, accepting money back, change back from what we paid. That in that case it's allowed because we borrowed the money, that it could be assumed to be legitimate. However, the accepting of money from the thief, if in the first place, might be a problem because the money is assumed to be stolen, and therefore paying them back at that point would be considered wrong. So at that point, it would be the accepting of the money to begin with. And we're not loaning the money to the thief. The thief is making an exchange. The above rules only apply if the buyer, that's the person that's interacting with the thief, is not afraid that thieves will injure him. However, if he feels threatened by them, he may buy the merchandise or exchange currency with them at the minimum required. So if he's in a location where the shop he has to deal with, these are seedy characters, and he needs to go into the shop, and he would rather not, he'd rather handle things on the upright manner, but that's he's in a difficult situation. He's interacting with he has to buy supplies, and this is where he has to go to buy the supplies, and he wants to get in and out of there as quickly as possible and painlessly as possible. And in that case, there's an allowance for him to do his business at the minimal amount necessary. I would assume that this isn't a case where he can't just go down the street to a better business, but he's kind of stuck doing business with the people he's stuck doing business with. This is apparent for the general permission to save one's life, even at the expense of another's money, even though it is explained in chapter 4, in the earlier chapter, in chapter 4, that this only applies in a life-threatening situation. It appears that in regard to the lesser prohibitions of benefiting from theft and aiding theft, this is permissible even for the sake of preventing extreme anguish and the threat of distress. So on this level, where it's not, it's kind of right on the line as to whether or not it's permissible to do this. So it's preferable not to, and we shouldn't whenever we can not do it. It's best not to do it. But if it's creates distress, then it's permissible to do it, because it's something that's right on the line between what's permissible and what's not permissible. Topic number 14. One may not buy items from slaves or children unless it can be assumed that the items belong to them and they are selling them with the consent of the owner, or that they are selling them with the consent of the owner. And that's Rambam Laws of Theft, Chapter 6, and Shulchan Aruch Kosher Mishpat, Chapter 358. So normally slaves and children, and in Jewish law that would also include wives, but in non-Jewish law the wives are allowed to have property. But so for slaves and children, minors who are not old enough to have their own, they're not considered to have their own property. At that point, we're not allowed to buy things from them because the assumption is they don't own anything. Therefore, if they don't own anything, how can we possibly be buying stuff from them? We should be buying things from the person that it's assumed that it belongs to. Now, if the household, if the culture, the society, or the household has it set up that the people are allowed, a slave is allowed to own a certain amount within the context of that household, or the child has his own personal property. It's set up within that family, within that household, that's how it's done, or within the culture. Then it's permissible. Otherwise, it's assumed that the slave or the child does not own any property themselves, and therefore it would not be permissible to buy from them, because that would be either it's assumed that the slave or the child stole it, or it's just assumed that they can't sell it and therefore it's not possible to buy it, and the purchase would be an act of theft. Or if it's done at the consent of the owner. So if the slave is commissioned by his master to sell items, and everyone knows this, he's in the marketplace, he runs a stall, and he's selling stuff at the consent of the owner, then it's permissible. Or even the child is also operating a stall at the marketplace, and the parents or the head of household understands this, and it's okay, then it's okay. Topic number 15. If a craftsman or a tailor, they receive an item to fix or materials to make an item, have leftover scraps from the materials, one should deal with these scraps in a manner prescribed by the law of the country. Now, within Jewish law, this is also all spelled out. But for non-Jewish law, it depends on each country's going to have their own practices, their own system set up as to how, if someone brings boards in to make a chair, somebody brings a board to the craftsman, and the craftsman's going to make a chair out of it. And the craftsman cuts the boards up, and he has leftover scraps, or he has wood shavings, or he has sawdust. Who does that leftover stuff belong to? That depends on the customs of that society, and also on the contract between the craftsman and the customer as to who owns the leftover product. If the accepted practice is to return them to the owner, one is obligated to do so, and keeping them is stealing. In places where the custom is not particular about them, they belong to the craftsman or tailor who fashioned the item. And see Rambam, Laws of Theft, Chapter 6, and Shulchan Aruch Kosher Mishpat, Chapter 358. Likewise, one may not buy factory products from factory workers unless the factory owner clearly allows them to sell the products they are working with. Otherwise, it can be assumed that the owner is particular concern or regarding this merchandise and the workers are stealing it and selling it on the side, in which case it would be forbidden to buy from them. So again, it depends upon the practices. In this case, the practices of the employer. It could be a factory, it could be it could be anything. And in today's society, oftentimes people have work on the side that's related to their primary work, and it becomes very questionable as to what they can do. Basically, it's how it's set up by the employer as to how what the workplace rules are as to what people are allowed to do. And we have a service society. What if a company has a carpet cleaning business? So they do carpets, and they get a job, and they go out and they clean the carpet. And what if the employees were to say, "Hey, we've got all this equipment here. We will offer the customer to clean their couch. You know, use the same equipment. They're going to clean the couch as well as the carpeting. Now they're paid to do the carpeting. Now they're going to clean the couch. They offer that service to the customer. The customer pays a little bit extra money to the employee, and they clean the couch. Most likely, that would not be permitted because they're using the job that's provided by the employer and the equipment. Who owns the job? Who owns the equipment? Who owns the time? Maybe the company allows it. Maybe it doesn't. So the customer would have to inquire if the company allows this to happen. And they would have to the customer who's the person being admonished not to aid the theft needs to know what is permitted. And another concern regarding factory workers in that, I remember working at a company where the employer would sell products, would allow the employees to buy products at cost, which is a very good employee discount. Then they could sell the product to people. The employees could have a business where they would sell stuff on the open market for regular price, and the employee would be allowed. You know, this was a perk allowed to the employees, and as long as that was being done that way. Now, what happened was employees were taking extra product. You know, they would buy one box, and they would take 2 boxes home. They would sell the 2 boxes, and that's where it gets very, very difficult. And every employer needs to set up a system and what's permitted or what's not permitted, and has to police that. In this case, a person would not know if the box of product they're buying was legitimately owned by the employee or was stolen by the employee. So there needs to be a carefulness on the part of people to know if what they're buying is a proper item. It's a property owned item. Topic number 16. One may not purchase items from a businessman whose profession is to take these types of items that belonged to his customers, do improvements or repairs, or some other service on these items and return them to their owners, since such a sale can be presumed to be theft. And this includes a sale item that contains material taken without permission from the customer's item. So a person's business involves working with other people's items and doing things with other people's items, repairing them, doing doing other services, manufacturing things with other people's product, and is then to return it to the customer, to the client. And we have to be very cautious in doing business with them, because we don't know. It's entirely possible that the person also buys their own product, because they're, let's say they're involved in lumber, and they bring in a lot of lumber from clients, but then they also, because they're already set up for it, they bring in lumber that they buy themselves. It might be permissible to buy lumber from that person, but we have to be cautious, because it may be items that he stole from a customer. We don't know. And here it's saying we're not allowed to do business. We're not allowed to buy these products from him. Period. Because we don't. It's a complicated area. That it's also possible that a customer brought a watch in and to be repaired and did not pay for it, and after 30 days or whatever the contract is, it becomes the property of the shop owner. That's also possible. We have to know what the contracts are, and we have to know we have to know that what the person is trying to sell us is a legitimate item. What is one permitted to purchase from him? If it can only be assumed that he is making a provisional change on part or all of the item that is entrusted to him for service and return, and then selling it, it is permissible to buy it from him. This is because it is only presumed, and is not known with certainty, that part or all of the sale of the item was stolen. This was discussed in the earlier topics, in the earlier chapter. For example, the person is hired to take his customers' woolen blankets and comb off the wool flocking that he should return with the blankets, so that it could be used for stuffing pillows. So if his business, okay, first of all, if we're not, it has to be something that we actually know that the person is stealing. If he does business, legitimate business, and he also has this repair things on the side. Let's say he works with lumber and he makes chairs with the lumber. And because he's already set up to work with lumber and make chairs, he will bring in, people can bring lumber to him and he'll make a chair out of that. So he has both businesses going on. Well, we're allowed to buy lumber from him, or even chairs from him, because he has this business anyway, and we don't know that it's stolen. It's only if we know that the item is stolen that it would not be permitted. And he also sells this type of pillows. Although it is only a provisional change in the wool flocking, one may buy the pillows because the wool flocking is only presumed to be stolen. So even if we have a gut level feeling, we're still allowed to buy it unless we know for a fact. Now, a gut level feeling that something's wrong here may be enough that a pious person would want to avoid buying products from this person. But we're permitted to buy products because we don't know for a fact that it's stolen. But if part or all of the sale items is definitely known to be stolen, it is forbidden to buy it, since the change in the item was only provisional and not permanent. So if we know, even if we know the person has the practice of adding, he has this lumber business where he makes chairs, and he'll take 10% of the lumber that people bring him, and he'll kind of put it off to the side, and he'll make his own chairs and sell them, and he gives them back 90% of the lumber. Then part of the lumber that is being used to make chairs would make it not permissible to buy a chair from him. If a permanent change was made in the item. Okay, so in this case, maybe the chairs would be permissible because he's changing the item. If it's in the case of the wool flocking, the wool, it's possible to take the wool that was raked or combed off of the blanket. It's possible to take that wool, I suppose, and turn it back into thread and turn it back into a blanket. So it hasn't actually changed its name, so to speak. It's a provisional change. So that also makes a difference. If it's stolen and it can be returned as the same item, even if it's gone through a temporary change, can be turned back, then it still belongs to the owner and cannot be purchased by another person, because that means that the other person is bringing it into his domain and is aiding in the theft. In the case of a chair, the question is whether it's possible to break the chair apart and it becomes lumber again. If it's possible to do that, then it hasn't changed its name, it hasn't changed its domain until someone buys it, in which case the buyer would be involved in theft. And according to this part here is referring to benefiting from the theft. The buyer would be benefiting from the theft because the item's already is still considered stolen. If the chair is a new item, if it cannot be turned back into the lumber, then it's already gone through the change of status and is no longer considered a stolen item. It's now considered a new item. What was stolen was lumber, and the lumber no longer exists. Now the new item is the chair, and it's maybe possible to buy the chair. If a permanent change was made to the item, it is permissible to buy it from the businessman, even if it is certainly stolen, since it has taken the item out of the owner's jurisdiction. So the item is no longer the same item as it was before. It no longer belongs to the original owner. Therefore, even if the lumber used to make the chair was stolen, the chair, if it is now a new item, would be permissible to purchase. Shulchan Aruch and Rima Kosher Mishpat, at the end of chapter 358. Shulchan Aruch Harav, Laws of Robbery, topic 23. Note, if threads are woven into a garment, there's a difference of opinion among the Torah law authorities as to whether or not this is a permanent change in the threads. So it all depends on whether or not an item can be turned back into the original thing, in which case it still belongs to the owner. And there's going to be areas where it's not easy to say. Like a chair, even if it's broken apart, it's no longer going to be the lumber that existed before the lumber was cut up into pieces to make a chair. So it depends on how the society, how that nation views the items, as to whether or not the item has changed its status. And that's going to change, like the threads that are used to make a garment. It would be very difficult in many cases to take the threads apart and say, okay, now we have the threads back. That's beyond reasonableness. If it's yarn that's used to knit a sweater, then yeah, it could be pulled apart easily. If it's sackcloth, it could probably be pulled apart. But if it's machine manufactured threading, it would be very difficult to pull it apart and have your original spool of thread you had before. So it all depends on the situation and how the culture views it. Thank you.